all the mics in place, and most importantly, all the people out there. I think, yes, no? All right. So welcome, everyone. As you can imagine, our focus will be on increased funding in K-12 education, and yes, I'm jumping right into it. Additional dollars directed towards housing, restoration of census funding, and restoration of funding for Central State Hospital. Additionally, members of the VLBC led in sustaining requested vetoes of several harmful bills that they had advocated for with the governor. And this is something that you all know we've been advocating for a long time. In communication with the governor last month, members of the VLBC identified a number of priorities. And we will highlight those priorities this morning and focus on those priorities today on the floor. Starting us off will be our Vice Chair, Senator Jennifer McCullough.
Good morning. The Legislative Black Caucus for many, many years has been focused on improving our K-12 education system and addressing some of the inequities that we find in education funding and policy. We were able to have some significant victories during session in the conference report of the budget that passed, with increased funding for the at-risk add-on and making sure that the first day of the funding of improving the counselor to student ratio was included. But these are just first steps, and while there was not enough money in the general fund to address some of our concerns further, this is something we will be focused on as we prepare for the 2020 session. In particular, we are not at levels of funding where we were pre-recession, although oftentimes people like to say we are. But when you account for inflation, when you account for some of the policy changes that were made, like the artificial cap on the support personnel, we will be continuing to focus on those. We will also be continuing to focus on increased funding for the at-risk add-on as well. And we have been working on this for a long time. We will also continue to work on policies in the education system that disproportionately impact our students. Everything from discipline to referral to law enforcement to testing to sort of what has become the overcriminalization of discipline behaviors that should be handled through the discipline process. And we will continue, as we have for decades, to work on these issues. And now I will turn it over to Jeff Bourne, who will discuss our accomplishments on housing.
Good morning. Like education, housing has been one of those issues that this body, Legislative Black Caucus, has worked on for years. And the 2019 session in general was no different. We made a lot of progress and took some really important steps on the policy side. And one of the things that we communicated with the governor is we need more investment into our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, because we not only have a demand problem when it comes to affordable housing, but we also have a supply problem. And these dollars will go to help construct and develop, renovate affordable housing units. And so when you combine the policy changes, like the one that Delegate Jones had to incentivize development and use of affordable housing and vouchers, and Delegate Bagley as well, with these additional funds, I think we'll be able to take some really critical steps forward and be able to provide one of the most basic needs that folks have across Virginia, and that's good quality affordable housing. And so we look forward to supporting and advocating for this today, but also going forward, as Jennifer McClellan said, in the 2020 session. And now we will hear from my friend Delegate Price regarding census and redistricting.
Good morning. One of the items that we've been advocating for is to restore the $1.5 million that was in the proposed budget for census outreach. The 2020 census is fast approaching and the federal level is woefully unprepared. but we can't afford to let that impact our ability to have a complete count for the Commonwealth. For every person that is not counted, we could lose about $2,000 in federal funding. And as you know, in 2015, $675 billion was allocated on the federal level based on census data. Virginia has received 18 billion with a B from federal funding based on census data. And an estimated 1.6 million Virginians will be what they call hard to count in 2020, and most of those are in districts that we represent and in the southwest parts of Virginia. And so we need these funds in order to outreach and make sure that everyone is counted, and we look forward to supporting that amendment in the budget. Also, during the legislative session in the House, as members of the VLBC raised concerns over the Republican-touted proposed constitutional amendment to create a redistricting commission, one of the points raised was the lack of concrete protections for minority voters and communities of interest. In response, Republicans and Democrats alike said that our concerns could be taken care with legislation next year. But why put off until next year, which you can do today? The recommended amendment to SB 1579, which will go to the Senate first on redistricting criteria, is the perfect opportunity for all to show that they care about our concerns and that their care was genuine, and that they are interested in making sure all Virginian voters have an equal say with their ballot, and we also look forward to supporting that amendment. Cliff from Chesapeake, Delhi Hayes.
Certainly, in the way of this awful, gruesome practice that the Commonwealth has instituted in suspending driver's licenses on individuals because there are court costs, fines, and fees outstanding, is a practice that we believe not only is cruel, but we believe it may even fall into the category of being unconstitutional. We have individuals who are working, trying to improve their lot, and yet the very practice of suspending one's driver's license is actually getting in the way of them and their ability to earn a living. Many of those persons with their driver's licenses suspended, they're trying to take care of their doctor's appointments. They're trying to traverse fundamentally with the things that are necessary for a healthy living and lifestyle. And unfortunately, this practice is one that gets in the way and undermines the ability for people to be able to improve that particular circumstance. Now, we also think it's egregious because what happens is an individual recognizes that they do have to get to work, they do have to take care of their families, and some folks are taking a chance driving to work, ultimately getting pulled over, and then ending up incarcerated for taking that chance. And we know, as a Legislative Black Caucus, in many cases, in those different categories, we're ending up with disparate, or there's a disparity in those individuals who are of color, or African Americans who are falling into this downward spiral. So we're here today to say that, as my grandmother used to say, when you know better, you do better. Virginia knows better than to have such a practice, and so we ought to do better. We're hopeful that the rest of the delegation of the House and Senate will join us as we support the governor and the amendment to get rid of this awful stain on the Commonwealth.
Morning. One of the issues that the Legislative Black Caucus has also looked at and addressed is one that affects all Virginians, what happens to be Central State Hospital, and that is mental health issues that have come to the rise, and we're more cognizant of the therapeutic role that's needed to help people. And Central State Hospital just happens to be the oldest facility that housed blacks in the nation. and it's still being used. And that is one of the positions that the Black Caucus had, is that it cannot wait, it should be addressed now. It was removed from the budget. We know that the governor is bringing it back, and he's bringing it back more realistic, but instead of 7 years, he's reduced the time to 5 years. We've been reaching with our colleagues on both sides of the aisle and conferees as well, and we feel comfortable that they've heard our voices representing as advocates for blacks in Virginia. That is more than that, because now it is a diverse facility, and it's good for the Commonwealth that we bring that old antiquated operation into the 21st century. And we are comfortable that our colleagues will see that. Both sides of the aisle will understand that the time is now to build a new central state hospital. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, you have had an opportunity to hear some of the highlights. I think most of them you are all familiar with. I do want to take a point of personal privilege to talk a little bit about a breakfast this morning. And at breakfast this morning, my son and I joined Delegate Bourne and Delegate Jones for breakfast. And Delegate Jones said to my son, "Hey, I know what it's like to be the son of the chair of the Black Caucus." And so it reminds me that, because his father oftentimes calls us, and many other former legislators oftentimes call us. So it reminds me that the work and the efforts that we put in is not just while we're here in office. This is stuff that we will be working on. Forgive me for saying it and being so blunt about it, but until we go to our grave, these are the issues that we will be working on. And so we really appreciate you all. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank the members of the media as we went through the ordeal last month, because you all were respectful. You tried to get to the bottom of the issues, but you were respectful. And so in tough times, that is appreciated. And so with that, we'll take a couple of questions, but we know there's a number of press conferences going on in the next 10 minutes that you might want to get to.
I know this is a comprehensive list. I wanted to ask about $1 million that the governor has proposed for minority-owned and women-owned businesses. Did that come up at all in your conversations with him, and how do y'all feel about that?
So, yeah, absolutely, to put that very clear, this is not a comprehensive list. These are the items that we brought to the table and we're championing based on the work that we've been doing for decades and based on the legislation that we carried during the session. In the conversation that we had with the governor, that did arise as something that actually they were putting forward, that we agreed with, knowing that it is a first step in bringing some equity into how minority and women-owned businesses are treated and handled within in the Commonwealth, but specifically in how the executive branch and their procurement process can be improved. So we look forward to supporting that, but as a first step.
About an hour ago, Delegate Gilbert was here, and he talked about how the Democrats have let the governor, the Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor off the hook. He said, you guys all called for the to resign, and now you're going along as if it's business as usual. Do you have any response to that?
I have a response to the issue, not to Delegate.
Sure. How about the issue?
But we have, and I look at them all differently. But I would also say that what was revealed on February 1st is not an impeachable offense, and I think I guess I am responding. I think Todd and his colleagues on the other side of the aisle will agree with that. I think if they thought it was an impeachable offense, we'll be having impeachment hearings. The same is true with Lieutenant Governor Fairfax. If they thought it was an impeachable offense, we will be having impeachment hearings. But we're not. That's not on the table. I think what's on the table is a service. And again, they're in the majority. If they want to have these hearings, they can do it. There's nothing we can do to stop them.
How would you characterize the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus's relationship with the governor right now?
I think, as you can see with the legislation, we have a good working relationship.
And I did have a specific question about
let me add one thing to that. I think it's important to understand there are issues, some of which we've discussed today, that the Black Caucus has been working on for decades. And we welcome anybody who wants to be a part of the work, to be a part of the work. But we are not gonna shy away from events that focus on that work just because of who comes. And so I think what Delegate Gilbert is talking about, there were some bill signings and some budget announcements on foster care, on Central State, on the repeal of the suspended license for failure to pay court costs. Those are all issues we've been working on for decades. And there's some issues that are more important than individual people. And we are going to show up when there's progress made on those issues. When there's not progress made on those issues, we're gonna fight for that progress. And we can't force anybody to resign. And so we were elected to legislate. We were elected to lead on the issues that our constituents and people of color and those who have been marginalized across this Commonwealth, we're here to focus on those issues. We're gonna continue to focus on those issues, whatever happens.
No.
It's important to note and reflect on the fact that all of the various things happened on February 1st, which was the first day of Black History Month. It was, all of it was shocking. We heard, we responded, but then we remembered who we are. We are of the, we are a Black Legislative Caucus, and we are of the minority party. And we have worked successfully with majority party leadership that have been our governor, not our governor, but always focused on what was best for minorities. And our issues today, issues are what we are addressing. And we are the legislative branch. We have three branches: administrative, judicial, legislative. We are here to legislate on behalf of people, and we are here to work with whomever we need to work with that agree with us on the issues that are important to people. And that's what we're doing, and our work speaks for that. We are here today to say those issues that we addressed and we say are important. This governor has agreed to work with us, and on those issues, we are working with this governor. As we work with Democratic governors, Republican governors, whomever has been in that leadership role to make sure that we do the work of the people.
All right, one more question.
Where does the Black Caucus stand on the hands-free driving amendment by the governor? I mean, do you think that's the thing that's gonna get through there? The germaneness question I know is still out there. Where do you guys stand on that?
So, in communications about this particular piece of legislation and what the governor would or wouldn't do with Senator Mason's bill, we were clear that the amendments that we would be willing to support would be those that would take it back to the bill that many of us, almost to a person, voted for. There were a couple exceptions, and so that's what the governor did, because we believe that if you're going to make this important policy change, we have to recognize and appreciate that there are some very complex and important issues to also address when you're talking about these sort of issues, and first and foremost of those would be taking those steps to make sure that application and implementation and enforcement of this law does not disproportionately affect African American drivers. And we believe that the enactment clauses, the amendments that we made through the legislative process go a long way to do that. And I would be remiss if I didn't highlight Delegate Price, who really did a lot of work on those amendments during the session. And Senator Locke. Yep.
Can I just ask one more question? Do you guys have any reaction to the two women who have accused the governor?
And that's a good segue to the next press conference that I think starts at 10, so I'm gonna let you all go to their press conference and hear from him directly. Thank you all.